Media recognition from Bloomberg, Reuters, recycling trade publications. Patented process for 100% recovery of critical metals, including cobalt, lithium, nickel, manganese, aluminum. American Manganese is focused on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. American Manganese trades on the TSX Venture, AMY, the US, AMYZF, and Frankfurt 2AM. For more information, visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Mark Leibovit, editor and publisher of the Leibovit VR newsletters, also known as VRTrader.com. Welcome back to the show, Mark.
Glad to be here, Jim.
Mark, do we have a special offer for our listeners?
We sure do at VRTrader.com. That's VRVictorRobertTrader.com. It's 50% off for any of my subscriptions. We have a bunch of newsletters if you go there, and the promo code is 2022 half off. 2022 HALFOFF, and you get 50% off in the promo code section when you use that phrase. It's at VRTrader.com.
Mark, are you shocked by the sharp decline in cryptocurrencies, especially Bitcoin? Apparently, it's off 55% from its November peak of $69,000, and 40% of Bitcoin holders are now underwater.
We're not shocked at all. Just, looking at the charts, it topped out, frankly, last year. I mean, February of 2021 or so, Bitcoin had a big top, and then it sold all the way down until like July of 2021, and then it came up and retested the high. Let's see, when was that? That was about the middle part of November of last year, and it couldn't break through, and it's been in a downtrend since. Plus our cyclical work, for those who had purchased our annual forecast model, which I highly recommend because it covers most of the major markets, including the major indexes and Bitcoin, and it gives you the cyclical swings that are theoretically anticipated ahead of time, and in particular, Bitcoin had mentioned a possible downtrend, so it doesn't come as any surprise here. A lot of it could be, engineered too. China might be playing some games out there, and banning it. I know at the Berkshire Hathaway meeting that we had this past week or so, Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's partner, I think he's about 98 years old. He made some scathing comments about crypto currencies, and in particular, he just said that I think he called it a venereal disease of the past during his statements. Generally skeptic about it, and he said that maybe the most precarious section of the global economy. Potentially creating, a bit of a financial crisis, because even though it's outside the system, the implication was, there's a cataclysm ahead. So he wasn't too optimistic about it. Of course, since then, it continued to go down. It was down anyway, but I thought that was really interesting. Of course, he's 98, very successful. I've been biased to alongside, in the big picture, but then again, maybe he's a lot smarter than me, and, I put together pieces, where I'm not just sitting here holding cryptocurrencies. For the most part, we do have a letter, we do write about it, and we have like a model portfolio of some of the stocks related to the crypto business, and many of which, of course, have not done well recently because of the slide in that, but we put that out for information, so at least you can track some of the main players out there. But, using the technical work and the cyclical work, that's what gets me into the market. So, frankly, it was, pretty tempting here. It's pretty oversold here, and as a trade, a little bit of a bounce from a trading point of view might make some sense here. But there hasn't been any broad confirmation of a bottom just yet. And the only thing else I might inject here is that, again, we've seen some huge volatility in this market since, the 2010-11 time frame. So, you got to be used to the wild ride. You have to have your seatbelt on and your crash helmet on, and when you're in this market, because it does have huge moves. But if you watch the chart, you can see where it's topping out. You can see where it's finding support. You can see where the trades are. So if you're technically oriented, you have a big advantage for those who are just buying and holding the stuff because it does swing, so nicely. So we're currently not in any, ETFs because it looked like it was a bit of a downtrend, and in hindsight, I guess we could have shorted some of them because the ETFs allow you to do that. But right here, they're pretty oversold. They might have a bounce here, but no great confirmation of a bottom. But I don't know if I would agree with Munger that it's a venereal disease and it's all over, and it's going to be the cause or synonymous breakdown of the world economy, and go to all those extremes. I'm not quite sure if I'm in that camp yet, but we'll take it a day at a time. It is definitely for those who are not faint of heart.
Well, think of the people of Guatemala where Bitcoin is part of their official currency.
Right. And It's been used as currency. Not only there, companies are using, many of the coins. So it's not like, it's gone to zero overnight. So, I don't know. I don't know. Again, I would agree with Charlie Munger, even though he's a genius in his own right, whether this is the end of the end or not. Part of the basis for that was, of course, an escape from conventional currency, fear that other currencies wouldn't do well, and you had to protect yourself. Of course, if you've been in the U.S. dollar, it's been rallying and making, multi-decade highs here as a flight to safety because of what's going on both in the equity markets, inflation, Ukraine, Russia, and so forth. So, it's funny because as the dollar's been stronger, the cryptos have been coming down, so suddenly the dollar became a bastion of strength and a protection versus the cryptos, which you would expect to have gone up, and you also would have expected gold and silver to be exploding, which they haven't either. So it just shows you when you get into a form of thinking about the way things should be, they pull the chair from underneath you, the rug from underneath you, and you're flat on the ground. Who would have thought that the best defense in this market, the market that we've experienced here since the markets topped out in November, would have been the U.S. dollar as the best place to put your money, and there are ETFs you can trade and futures and so forth for that. So you would have thought, of course you could have been short the market too, which we've been doing at VR Trader, using the inverse ETFs. We've been trading them almost daily and doing well with those because the market just keeps helping us by going down. But, you'd have thought again, gold and silver, the cryptos, would have done great, but no, it was the dollar. So anyway, rules are made to be broken, Jim. That's why you got to follow the charts. You got to follow the cycles. You got to, adapt to the trends. You got to fade the news. Stuff you're hearing on the conventional, broadcasting channels about what should be happening or could be happening. Is usually, not the advice you should be listening to.
Well, you look at the volume, where the money is going and where the money is leaving. I always am fascinated by every night when they wrap up what happened on the stock markets. They always blame or attribute it to some kind of physical fact, but you don't. You just say, well, money was running from that area anyway.
Or I wait for the extreme moves, when they really kill some of these stocks and they come down big. I just love it. I mean, it's like a setup to, go shopping at a bargain basement, and it happens all the time. And, of course, you like to have, the technical confirmation and the big break, volume slowing to the downside, so the panic is already in, and the same thing happens in inverse right at the tops where they're just overzealous about the market going up forever. So, it's been clear, pretty much. We put our forecast model out late January and it, called for a bear market. So nothing that's happened here is, any great surprise. And, there's so much we can talk about. I mean, they're blaming the Fed. The truth is, the Fed has very little control and power over any of this anyway. The inflation had nothing really to do with them. They're not talking about fiscal policy, all the spending that the U.S. Congress is spending, like the multi-tens of billions that they're sending to Ukraine, and just, printing money like crazy, and the whole, fiscal policy has been a mess, no matter, so that operates completely separately from the Fed, and there's just so many factors out there, so it's just a bunch of insane people doing a lot of insane things, so the market is essentially punishing everybody by coming down now and trying to correct the excesses. And, again, they blame it on the Fed, but it really is other causes. We could talk about, price inflation, commodity inflation, all these things happening, crop shortages, supply shortages. Was this all caused because the Federal Reserve, had a loose money policy? Of course not. So they're blaming the wrong group of people, and I don't know if there's any one source that you can blame. Like I say, COVID came in. Somebody, we can argue all day whether it was manufactured in a contrived event or whether it really was an accident or not. Who controls that? Who controls the solar flares? In fact, there's one supposedly supposed to hit the Earth tomorrow, the 13th, according to the space website that I tracked. So I think it's put out by NASA. Whether it's going to have any great effect, we've seen them, shut off some shortwave radios and stuff. So I mean, the shortages of food, fertilizer issues, planetary changes. I mean, all these things come together to create the shortages and the inflation and so forth. So, by blaming the Fed, which I've said many times in these broadcasts should have been abolished decades ago. And even I'm listening to some of the financial media, and they're saying, oh, the street doesn't really believe the Fed anymore, and they feel it's lost credibility. So I say, fine, get rid of it. That's what we should have done a long time ago. Let the free market make decisions about interest rates. Get rid of the institution, which really is behind the curve and is irrelevant anyway. But anyway, a lot of stuff to talk about. That's just sort of a comment. We have some other interesting things, too, we can discuss when you have time.
We'll have more with Mark Leibovit right after this.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Mark Leibovit. The Russia-Ukraine war is getting all the headlines, but should we be concerned about what looks like an economic meltdown in China, the world's second largest economy, where 70% of their asset bubble is connected to real estate?
Yeah, they had a bit of crash over there, and they had a bit of a problem also shutting down Shanghai and a lot of the country because of the supposed COVID or virus breakout or whatever it is over there. And you wonder if that really is for real or whether it's an engineered shutdown to try to somehow disrupt the West and the U.S. economy too. That's all possible. Instead of firing missiles and threatening with military action, why not just shut down the economy, tell everybody to stay home for a few months on the excuse that it's COVID, and destroy the U.S. economy while doing it, and winning a war in a different way, so to speak. The markets keep coming down here enough that could cause not only civil unrest but collapse of our system on a certain level too. I mean, all these things could happen. How bad we had the financial crisis in 2008-9. The kind of problems that come out of an event like that. So that could be, that could be part to their strategy. But anyway, China just did some military exercise. I just read surrounding Taiwan with a bunch of ships, and this is one of the sources that I had read last night. So there's something going on there. They're ultimately going to take over Taiwan. It might be 5 years from now or something. So the question is how that's going to affect, the world economy in the U.S. So a lot of crazy things happening out there. And you got Biden administration canceling oil and gas leases. I read yesterday for Alaska and the Gulf of Mexico, just when they should be doing just the opposite. And I think we just have the inmates running the asylum, Jim. I think that's what's happening.
And even though the oil companies are getting record profits, I'm also hearing from people from the oil patch saying none of this money is being used for exploration because they fear the government would just shut them down and wouldn't let them build pipelines from any new oil they discovered.
You may recall in my broadcast in the last several months or even a year or so back, I was making some extraordinary statements about, which still appear extraordinary, but because we're still not at those levels, but seeing, crude oil at several $100s a barrel in the years to come could happen, and because of this insanity and because of the need for, fuel that we won't have. So, it's a mess out there. I mean, it could get a lot worse. That's my fear, and that's one of the reasons we're bearish on the U.S. markets and the equity markets in total because, again, the inmates are running the insane asylum here, and, it's just going to precipitate more and more selling, and, it's going to be, unfortunately, a nasty environment unless, of course, you're doing as we're doing, where we're making money on the inverse ETS. For some reason, the street doesn't talk about this stuff. It's like, buy the S&P 500 spider, be conservative, just own the S&P 500 stocks and just put that away for your retirement. Well, there's an inverse S&P, and there are times too, that you should be playing the downside of the market, not the up, and they just don't talk about that. It's always buy, 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 but we've been on the inverse side and, tracking it pretty well. In fact, our first target, I think I mentioned in our interviews in about the 3,800 level in the S&P, we got to the low 3,800s, today. So, we hit a sort of a first target that we've been talking about here for weeks. So we do have, unfortunately, lower targets out there, but we had an interesting event on, Wednesday. I don't write about this too often. It was called Weird Wally Wednesday. And that was, of course, we also talk about Turnaround Tuesdays and other things, which, the press is starting to pick up on a little bit. We've been writing about it for years, where the market tends to change direction on a trading basis on a Tuesday. Sometimes it's intraday, sometimes it lasts for a day or two. But on Wednesday, we had the Weird Wally, and the market was down yesterday and today. And generally, even in normal markets, the Weird Wally is a down day the week ahead of option expiration, which is a week from Friday, this Friday, following Friday. So it's an unwinding of some of the positions in the options market. Tends to bring the market a little bit lower in normal markets. So we wrote about that. That's sort of an interesting event that we try to, put out in front of our subscribers so they understand what is going on out there. It's not something that you hear about in the conventional media all that often.
Mark, before we go, you always like to add a little disclaimer about what you are and what you're not.
Oh, yes. Okay. Well, I am not, I should have mentioned at the top, I am not a financial advisor, nor do I give financial advice. We do provide educational information in on our website, vrtrader.com. Oh, and one final comment. We generally touch really briefly on the geocosmic, and we won't be talking for another week. I believe this coming Tuesday, May 17th, the House Subcommittee in the U.S. Congress is going to have a hearing on UFOs, believe it or not. And, people laugh when I bring that subject up, but now it's legitimate enough for the U.S. Congress to have a hearing on May 17th. Apparently, from what I'm reading, the Congress hasn't had a public hearing on UFOs for over 50 years. And one of the Democratic representatives, I think is Andre Carson, he's a Democrat from Indiana, made that statement regarding this the first time, and he says that will change next week when they have this hearing, and he's concerned about national security and so forth and so forth. Anyway, just something put on your calendar. I don't think it's going to change anything about disclosure necessarily, but I've been researching this for decades and writing about it, and there's something rotten in Denmark. That's the only thing I can tell you. The truth has really never really come out, and I don't know if you're going to hear any more from Congress next week. I doubt it. So it's been a well-kept secret for probably military and other reasons, but something to pay attention to because, we talk about Ukraine, we talk about the stock market going down, we talk about the weather changing, but the UFO story is as significant as any of those, or even greater, because if it's really true, some people say it's time travelers, some people say it's extraterrestrial, some people just say it's advanced technology that we're not talking about, that we have. Whatever it is, it has great significance on our welfare and our future, as great as any of these other stories. So anyway, that's why I try to talk about it a little bit, because if it's being kept such a great secret, then it must be much more important than Ukraine or the economy or, food shortages and stuff. If it wasn't, why aren't we talking more about it? So there's something real, some great secret that's being held back from us, and that's why I take the time to even talk about it. And I'm fearful that if they actually came out with the truth, it probably would hurt the markets and hurt things more than they've already been hurt, because I think the truth might be too scary for most people to accept. But thank you for that extra time on that subject, Jim.
Mark, I still want the prediction of the cover of Mechanics Illustrated 1967 predicting flying cars by the year 2000. Where is my flying car? I hope they share that. That's
what the Jetsons wanted in the cartoon series from decades ago. People are still living that fantasy, right? But we may have it. Back to the Future had that flying car in the film. My guess is we have it, but it's not publicly available yet. I think we have that technology. That's my gut feeling.
Mark, thank you so much for chatting with us.
Talk to you next week. Thank you.
My guest has been Mark Leibovit, editor and publisher of the Leibovit VR newsletters, also known as vrtrader.com. If you have any questions for Mark or any of our other guests, you can send them to info@howstreet.com, our YouTube channel, Talk Digital Network. Find us on Twitter @HowStreet. We're also on Facebook. I'm Jim Goddard. Thank you for listening.
Comments made on HowStreet.com radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. HowStreet.com radio is a production of HowStreet Media Incorporated.